Should we hold Whitney Houston accountable? The tragic legacy of Bobbi Kristina Brown. When Whitney Houston passed away in 2012, the world mourned the loss of a once-in-a-generation voice. She was the voice, the diva whose rendition of "I Will Always Love You" became the gold standard of power ballads. Her legacy as a music legend is unquestioned. But alongside her fame was a deeply troubled private life, one that had real and devastating effects on her only daughter, Bobbi Kristina Brown. For years, most of the public scrutiny focused on Bobby Brown, Whitney's ex-husband, often labeled a toxic influence and a deadbeat father. However, a growing conversation is asking a more uncomfortable but essential question. Was Whitney Houston also responsible for her daughter's pain, struggles, and ultimately her death? A love that couldn't save. Bobbi Kristina Brown was more than just the daughter of two superstars, she was Whitney's world. Friends and family often describe their relationship as deeply loving and inseparable. Whitney took Bobbi Kristina everywhere. She brought her on tour, into interviews, on red carpets, and even on stage during iconic moments like the 1994 American Music Awards. In Whitney's eyes, keeping Bobbi Kristina close was a way to protect her from the chaos of fame and the dangers of the world. But sometimes bringing someone close doesn't mean shielding them. Sometimes it exposes them more. People close to the family have said that Whitney believed having her daughter by her side would keep her safe. That if she could just hold on tight enough, Bobbi Kristina wouldn't be swept away by the same demons Whitney herself was battling. But love, no matter how deep, couldn't shield the young girl from the dysfunction that came with being raised in the eye of a very public storm. A childhood in the crossfire. From a very young age, Bobbi Kristina was caught in the crossfire of her parents' volatile marriage, their addictions, and their fame. She didn't grow up in a stable household, but rather in a world filled with paparazzi, reality TV cameras, drugs, and public breakdowns. Reports have indicated that Whitney and Bobbi's home life often included prolonged drug binges, intense arguments, and instability. There are even claims that at just 17, Bobbi Kristina was photographed by tabloids snorting cocaine and drinking heavily. The instability didn't end with Whitney and Bobbi's divorce. In fact, it might have worsened. Whitney continued to struggle with addiction and poor decision-making, including the one that many now view as a turning point: bringing Nick Gordon into her home. The Nick Gordon factor. Nick Gordon was not Bobbi Kristina's biological brother, but Whitney took him in as a teenager and raised him like a son. Years later, he and Bobbi Kristina began a romantic relationship that would come under intense scrutiny. Many have questioned why Whitney thought it was appropriate or safe to bring a troubled young man with no formal guardianship into their inner circle. And even more tragically, Nick would be present at the death scenes of both Whitney and Bobbi Kristina. Bobby Brown, Bobbi Kristina's father, has not minced words when speaking on Nick's involvement. He has explicitly said he believes Nick Gordon was responsible for the deaths of both his ex-wife and his daughter. According to Bobbi, there was one common factor in both tragic endings, and that was Nick. And while the legal system never officially held Nick Gordon accountable before his own death in 2020, the allegations and suspicions have not gone away. Nick was reportedly controlling and abusive, isolating Bobbi Kristina from family and friends. Prior to her death, she was allegedly planning to leave him, move to Los Angeles, reconnect with Bobby Brown, and start over. She had even made plans to meet a friend the day she was found unresponsive in a bathtub, the same tragic fate her mother suffered 3 years earlier. The mirror deaths, Whitney and Bobbi Kristina. The similarities between the deaths of Whitney Houston and Bobbi Kristina are chilling. Both were found submerged in bathtubs. Both had various substances in their systems. Both were in unstable relationships. And both had been struggling emotionally leading up to their deaths. Whitney was found face down in a Beverly Hilton hotel bathtub in February 2012. Her autopsy revealed traces of cocaine, marijuana, Xanax, and other sedatives. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, though the coroner noted only mild heart disease and insufficient evidence to support a heart attack theory. In fact, there wasn't even enough water in her lungs to confirm she drowned while alive, prompting speculation about whether she died before entering the bathtub or if foul play could have been involved. Bobbi Kristina's death in July 2015 was nearly a mirror image. She had marijuana, alcohol, benzodiazepines, and morphine in her system. Her death was ruled as immersion associated with intoxication, but the cause could not be definitively classified as accidental or intentional. The tragic symmetry between their deaths suggests a dark pattern, one that began long before either woman was found in a tub. Was Whitney a failing parent? It's uncomfortable, even painful, to ask whether Whitney Houston failed as a parent. Her charisma and her musical gifts have shielded her legacy from harsh scrutiny for years. But love alone isn't enough, and shielding someone physically doesn't mean shielding them emotionally or psychologically. By the time Bobbi Kristina was a teenager, the damage was already visible. She had endured her parents' toxic relationship, witnessed drug use firsthand, and was often left to emotionally parent her own mother. It is no exaggeration to say that Bobbi Kristina was forced to grow up too fast in a world too dangerous for a child. Yes, Whitney loved her daughter with all her heart. But she also made dangerous decisions, remained in toxic relationships, and brought volatile people into her daughter's life. Whether out of denial, addiction, or naivety, Whitney's actions had consequences, and her daughter paid the price. Bobbi Brown's role. Bobbi Brown has faced decades of criticism for his role in Whitney's downfall and his alleged failures as a father. He has admitted to past drug use and infidelity and has owned up to many of his mistakes. But even his harshest critics now acknowledge that he tried to be more present in Bobbi Kristina's life toward the end. She was reportedly preparing to move closer to him before her death, a sign that maybe she, too, believed a fresh start with her father could be healing. However, Bobbi has also been accused of not stepping up sooner. After Whitney's death, he had an opportunity to intervene, to protect his daughter from Nick Gordon and the lingering trauma of her past. Some argue he failed just as much as Whitney did, if not more. The role of fame. It's also important to consider the role of fame in this tragedy. Whitney Houston wasn't just a mom. She was a global superstar. The pressure of that spotlight may have blinded her to the toll it was taking on her daughter. Instead of shielding Bobbi Kristina from the dark side of fame, Whitney inadvertently made her a part of it. From reality shows to media interviews, Bobbi Kristina was often treated like an accessory to her mother's brand. She never had a normal childhood, and the loss of her mother at 18 thrust her into even deeper turmoil. Her brief stints in acting and public appearances, like her interview with Oprah, revealed a young woman desperately trying to stay afloat. Was she getting too close to the truth? Some conspiracy theorists believe that Bobbi Kristina was on the verge of revealing something significant before her death. There have been claims that she was starting to talk about the true circumstances surrounding her mother's passing and the controlling forces behind the scenes. While there is little concrete evidence to support these theories, they persist, especially given how eerily similar their deaths were. Did Bobbi Kristina know too much? Was she silenced before she could speak out? These questions may never be answered, but they reflect a deep public distrust in the narrative we've been given. Final thoughts. The tragedy of Bobbi Kristina Brown is layered. It's about more than just addiction or toxic relationships. It's about generational trauma, the burden of fame, and what happens when a child becomes collateral damage in an adult world spinning out of control. So, should Whitney Houston be held accountable? Yes, not to villainize her, but to acknowledge that even the most iconic figures can make tragic, human mistakes. To learn from her story, we have to tell the truth. Whitney Houston was a woman who loved her daughter deeply but was also too lost in her own struggles to provide the stability and safety Bobbi Kristina needed. Holding her accountable doesn't mean erasing her accomplishments. It means recognizing that behind the glamour, behind the voice, was a mother who, despite her love, may have failed in the most important way. And perhaps, by finally having this conversation, we can begin to honor Bobbi Kristina's memory. Not as a footnote to her mother's legacy, but as a full, complex person who deserved better than the hand she was dealt.